Do you live life with the lid firmly locked down? Or do you imagine having the freedom to fully express yourself in all situations, but you feel that's somehow out of reach for you? Now, maybe you make a good show of openness, you're approachable, you're friendly and happy to talk about things. But if you're a lid on person, then, and you get really truly honest with yourself, aren't you selective about what you share? Those deeper, more challenging aspects of you. It's those things that you keep under the lid. Well, if this is ringing uncomfortable bells, then, you probably sell yourself the story that keeping those things under the lid is the best choice for everyone. Perhaps even that those things don't really matter in any way. What difference would it make to share them anyway? But as long as we're being really honest here, it's probably truer that you're shit scared of what would happen if it came off. Well, in this episode, I'm going to pour some petrol on the fire inside of you that is burning to break free. That fire that longs for you to really show up in the world. Be seen, be heard, and be confident in sharing the whole of you, especially the messy stuff. And I'm going to lay out a safe path from the lid on to the lid off life. So there's a way to get to what you've always longed for, a life where you matter, where your needs are met, and you stay connected in the process. So that's what this episode is about. Stay with me and let's do this. Hit it, Kim.
Welcome to the Be a Brilliant Human podcast. You're in the right place if you're a growth-seeking being who acknowledges the challenges and delights of your humanity on the path to an ever more conscious life. If you want to feel inspired to love and accept yourself, to feel free to be and express you in all your brilliance, if you want to truly value yourself and others and feel energized and alive both at home and in the world, then sit back and take a breath as you explore and grow the brilliance of your beautiful human self with your host, the father of non-personal awareness and creator of the Mpa Process, Joel Young.
Hello, and welcome to the Be a Brilliant Human podcast with me, Joel Young. I am delighted that you're here. We are up to episode number 81, which means you can find the show notes at www.beabrillianthuman.com/81. And you can listen to all previous 80 episodes. If you want to find the show notes for any of the episodes, just find out what the episode number is. And just put that after the URL, the www.beabrillianthuman.com/ then the number. And you can always go and look at all of them if you just visit the main website. I'm going to say it for the third time already, www.beabrillianthuman.com. Just go right there and you can find a list of all the episodes we've done. And of course, you can, if you're on a podcast platform like Spotify or Google Podcasts or Apple or Breaker or any of those ones, then there'll be a roll of all the different episodes you can look at. And if you're brand new, I'm delighted that you're here. If you want to get notifications of when these episodes come out, if you like this show, then hit that subscribe button. If you're a regular and you haven't subscribed, why not? It supports the show. The algorithms love it. And it lets you know when these episodes come out. So today, before we get into today, actually, always to let you know, especially if you're brand new, that I often talk about MPA. I'm known as the creator of the Mpa Process. It's a simple way to stop taking things personally. It's always going to be a support in what I share in the show. And if you really practice it, it can take you from, a life where the stuff of life sticks to you to where it can literally just roll off your back. And you not have the stuff that you don't want to cling to you don't have the stuff that you don't want to cling to you. Oh God. It's one of those days, folks. Well, we'll see how we get on for the rest of the episode. And you can download the Mpa Process for free, get started. You can simply go to NPA, that's November Papa Alpha 4, that's number 4.me/MPA sheet to get to it. Or you can just go to the main website, joelyoungmpa.com, or if you're looking at the show notes, there'll always be a link on those pages to get hold of the process for free. You can try it, bring it into your life right away. And also, I've recently launched the Loggerheads to Lover Hearts 5-Day Challenge. It's a relationship challenge to free a frustrating relationship logjam in just 5 days. Again, you'll find links to that on the show notes. And in the context of today's show, we're talking about, life with the lid off and living with the lid on. In a way, that's a log jam within yourself. So much as I'm going to give you today different ways to support you in going on this journey and taking the lid off in a safe way, I think that the Loggerheads to Love Hearts 5-Day Challenge would be also a great support for you if you're working with the logjam with yourself. Now, on to today. Fair warning. I'm not going to pull my punches today, because if you're a lid-on person, today's episode, it might push a few buttons. But what kind of guy would I be if I didn't give you a nudge in the uncomfortable direction that will ultimately get you where you truly want to go? So in this episode, I'm going to be speaking kind of very directly to you if you recognize that you live life with the lid on. But if you don't think you're someone who lives life with the lid on, then, I'm going to give you some good reasons to keep listening anyway. So firstly, lid on people are masters of self-denial. So maybe you hadn't realized that this is what you've been doing. And then, maybe I'll trigger you enough to shake you into awareness and then obviously improve that part of your life. Secondly, while I'm talking about life with the lid on, it isn't necessarily the whole of life where we do this. Sometimes we can be open in certain areas, whereas other areas bring out this kind of self-suppressing behavior. So it's worth considering, if there are places in your life, where you do this, even if only a little bit, because if you spot that, then this episode is going to help you free up those parts of your life. And finally, if you're truly someone who never puts the lid on yourself, and there are people out there that don't do that, then chances are there are people around you that do, and it never hurts to understand the behaviours of others around you, especially if you care about them or encounter them on a regular basis, like at work, for instance. All right, so let's start at the beginning. It's a very good place to start. It's well worth time, taking time to understand, why do we choose to put the lid on in the first place? Now, life with the lid on, or situations where you keep a lid on it, I suppose is the way to say that, it's about suppressing your authentic self, usually for fear of some imagined dire consequences. So first up, I want you to know that, if you find yourself living with the lid on, you're really not alone in this. It's actually a shockingly common survival strategy in our culture, and it is absolutely a survival strategy. So children who choose the lid, if you like, they generally grew up with a sense that they needed to be a good girl or a good boy in some way. And either there was enough conflict in the household already, perhaps an explosive or abusive a parent, or maybe a sort of, in quotes, difficult for the parent sibling, or there was some kind of fragile detente, like an apparent peace and an uneasy okayness, but with lots of unspoken undercurrents. In any case, on some level, you felt like you were living in a tinderbox, and a spark from you could sort of ignite it and blow the whole thing apart. So you tell yourself, best keep quiet about your needs and your troubles. Best use your creative mind and your inner resourcefulness to make things okay, even if they're not. Oh, and best do that all by yourself, by the way, rather than trouble anybody with it, right? So as kids, we kind of instinctually link our survival to the stability of our home life. We take that stuff very personally. And, while, we're in that necessarily dependent mode, those survival strategies are actually the things that get us through. But then we grow up, we leave the nest, but we take those survival strategies with us, only for them to become our cages. So we end up with that lid-on cage going with us. Now, just so you know, and you probably guessed this already, this is not unfamiliar territory to me. I've done my time with the lid on, I've done my time in the cage. But the price I paid for that was like my soul, my life force, my truth. And time and again, it was the very relationships I told myself I was preserving, it cost those too. Now, I'm not trying to be deliberately melodramatic here. It's actually a painful truth. Life with the lid on is very costly to your well-being. Now, fortunately for me, something inside me cracked, and I realized, in a very visceral sense, that the price was too high. And that realization enabled me to commit to facing my fears and living life with the lid off. Now, was it scary? Heck yeah. Did I stumble and fall? Yes, I did. Was it painful at times? Yes, I can't lie, it was painful at times. But was it worth it? Hell yes, it was. And today, my experience of life is a life with the lid off. And, it's well and truly off. I, feel empowered, authentic and free in my relationship to the world. Now, people close to me will tell you kind of that I'm fearlessly honest and clear about, where I am, what I want, who I am, and I'm not even an arse about it, which is something I used to fear. Okay, well, hardly ever. But at least I'm more self-forgiving, and I know the risk is worth it, if I end up being an arse. And, am I perfect? Do I never, ever pick up the lid? Am I never scared to share my not so nice self? Well, no, let's be real. I'm human. And life's always going to show you where there's more to learn. But my relationship to the lid has changed beyond all recognition. And things that would have seemed impossible for me in the past are kind of just automatically available to me now. Like honest, vulnerable communication, strong boundaries, peace with the temporary non-peace and necessary confrontation that shows up in life. Actually knowing what I want and sharing it and other stuff like that. So life, including its inherent imperfections, feels rich. It feels juicy and well, alive. And now you're probably thinking, well, bully for you, Joel. Good for you, mate. Well, I'm not telling you this just to blow my own trumpet. I'm sharing it because, you're someone who's learned to keep the lid on. But like me, something inside you has cracked or is cracking even as you listen to this episode, or you're at least beginning to realize that the pains outweigh the gains, then you're ready to do what it takes to change. So then I'm sharing, my positive outcome for you in the hope that my experience can help guide you along that lid off life road, or inspire you to finish the journey if you've already started it. Now, I kid you not, there's a lot of challenges along the way. But I know if I can do it, then with a little help, you can do it too. So the first step is to take a ruthlessly honest look at the lid on life. So we've kind of looked at where it came from in the childhood. So let's have a look at adult life with the lid on. Brace yourself. So adult life with the lid on, what does it look like? Well, you're fine. I get it, you're fine. Everything's fine. You're okay with things. No, really, you are. That sense of underlying simmering I'm getting from you, like years of making things not matter that actually do for the sake of not rocking the boat or keeping the peace, or because, I have to be the bigger person and you know what? I can take it. It's threatening to break through the surface. Probably just my imagination. Best leave it, eh? It'll give you a chance to pack it down again. That stuff that was clearly never there, just my imagination. I'll not mention that high-tech, high-security steel wall that I hallucinated just now underneath that soft, easygoing and happy to accommodate exterior. The one that you like to be known for, the one with the signs that say, approaching this wall without explicit permission may result in immediate and ruthlessly efficient termination. Have a nice day, smiley face. Won't mention that at all. Okay, I'm being comical, but am I touching a nerve? Well, good if I am, because if you want freedom, you're in just the right place. You're amongst friends here, so we're going to dig a little deeper. Okay, brace yourself again. So let's look at what happens when life triggers you. Cue image of the Incredible Hulk saying, you wouldn't like me when I'm angry. Because, well, here's the thing. Life has a way of triggering strong emotional responses, especially in close personal relationships. And keeping the lid on builds back pressure. I'm not talking about the physical back. It's like that back pressure. It's like stuffing another unwelcome item into an already full cardboard box. Now, the box may be big. It may be strong. but it's only so big and so strong. At some point, the sides are just gonna give. It's gonna burst, and all that stuff is gonna come out. There's most likely also, when it comes out, a lot of energy behind it, that back pressure. And given your legendary packing skills, if it's not unpacked with love and care, then it's going to pop unexpectedly with dramatic and probably painful effects. In other words, it's going to be messy. Now, if you tend to keep the lid on, you're probably scared of losing control of yourself. Perhaps you're terrified that the emotion will kind of take hold of you. You could say anything. You could even go berserk, or worse, maybe you'd be pushed into that cold, cruel place that's been unconsciously monitoring every weakness in the perceived wrongdoers, and know exactly where to stick the knife. Oh dear, that's in you if you're a lid-on person. But it's not who you really are, is it? And what then, asks the fear? Loss? Disconnection? Hell? And, never what you really want anyway, whatever that is. So, this is especially the case with emotions that come into the anger spectrum, or where there's a sense, a sense you want to spit out at others. Those sort of things can be the worst. So generally, lid-on folk are scared of the consequences of the uncontrolled outburst. Nevertheless, due to the back pressure, at some point that volcano erupts. And those people around you are like, what the actual fuck just happened? And they get hurt. And you end up feeling bad because they got hurt. And we're talking really bad. And that's the case even if there was, in amongst all the messiness, there was a good deal of truth in what you said or maybe shouted. And if that wasn't bad enough, along with that back pressure, keeping the lid on can have even more troubling consequences for you and your life experience, because it tends to create inner stagnation, the anger can leak out as that sort of shitty passive aggressive behavior. The box starts to split, something leaks out, and you reach for the tape, because you've learned to be afraid of being direct or sharing feelings that might bring up confrontation. You have that sort of gnawing background sense that you're living a lie, and you wonder why nobody sees the real you, and often end up feeling like a victim of that. Cue more passive aggressive leaks, and the vicious cycle continues. I'll tell you something, it takes a lot of energy to keep all that stuff in. So no wonder you feel tired. No wonder sometimes you just want to check out and stick your head in the sand, or the TV, or the chocolate box. No wonder your brain goes fuzzy and you start, doing one thing only to end up doing a bunch of other less important things and wondering how the heck that happened. Life can lose all its juice, becoming dull and grey and meaningless. And as you're probably aware, none of that puts, good chemistry in your blood stream, and that affects the immune system, along with your emotional set point, if you know about that. All that can become depressed too. So what to do? What do I do, Joel? Yes, I hear it. I admit it. What do I do? Well, before we get there, we've got to look at your deepest resistance. What's the deepest resistance? You know this. It's that part of you that's asking, well, what's the point? Why bother? Why take the risk? Well, the point, dear listener, is you. You are all locked up in there. Your energy is all locked up in there. Your creativity, your life force, your truth, even your integrity. That life you fantasize about, it's all in there. The fact that you're still listening, I'm getting really ranty now, and that you've stayed with me tells me that something inside of you is so done with keeping the lid on, so done with holding yourself back, so done with putting yourself at the bottom of the pile, and so ready to break free. Now, I know it's scary. I know you've probably come to the edge many times before, but I believe that the path I'm about to lay out for you not only plays to your strengths, but also takes into consideration and works with your fears and frailties. So let's take a look at what you can do to end the cycle. So if you want to change this, it's really a matter of open, self-responsible communication. And there's kind of 5 steps to it. So the first one is you've got to redefine your response to those emotional warning signs. So the good news about, having been scared of those emotional outbursts means that you're already highly trained. Your awareness is highly trained, to notice the potential outbursts in advance. So this gives you the opportunity to take steps to handle things differently. In the lid-on life, you've learned to use those emotional warning signs as a signal to stuff things down again. That's like throwing yourself on the landmine. Very noble and all that. But in the emotional and relational realm, nobody really wins when you do that. But what if you use those same signs as a signal to diffuse the landmine with open, self-responsible communication? In other words, to speak with those closest to you. So, I'm saying those closest to you because aren't they the ones that get it when you explode? Isn't it those who you love the most, with whom you feel safest to let off with? And you can really help yourself with this if you set some things up with them in advance, which brings us on to step 2. And step 2 is to tell the people that you love that you're committed to making this change. So, as you decide to take this brave step and take the lid off, it's good to forewarn those potentially in the firing line as you take your first steps. And remember, there's likely a fair bit of back pressure. So explain to them that you realize you tend to keep the lid on and, underneath there are some messy emotions. And explain that you realize that holding it in isn't good for anyone. It's not good for you and it's not good for them or the relationship. After all, they're not really getting the real you. And then your decision to sort of step fully into this path is going to mean change. And that change can be a challenge for those around you. So what I'm saying is people tend to respond a lot better, when they at least have some idea of what's going on in you. And then step 3 is you need to ask for their understanding and support. So that needs a bit of explanation. You can explain, it's likely to be scary as heck for you, that you might make a mess of it at times. You might want to offer some apologies in advance and explain that it's really about you learning to come out of your bunker. Explain that you're working hard to resolve your inner conflict, to change a lifelong pattern and to be more honest, more real and more true with them. And explain that, your intention for consciously taking the step is to have a better and ultimately more connected relationship, not only with yourself, but also with them. And tell them what it would mean to you to receive their support. If you can be this vulnerable and real with your loved ones, you have the best chance of them doing all they can to support you. Which brings us to number 4. Help them to help you. That means sharing what you need in those challenging moments. It's going to take some self-inquiry, I guess, to sort of find out what you need. So what would help you recenter if you lose it? Think about what you're really looking for from them, in terms of how they can respond in a way to help you come back to recenter. They're going to be much clearer about what's actually happening in you rather than trying to figure out, guess, or make up a story in their head. And they'll also have a way to respond that you've already told them, which is great in another way because then you can't tell them that's not what I wanted and get in the loop again. Tell them what makes you clam up and what would encourage you to be more honest and open. Chances are they know that they'd recognize when you've clammed up and they probably really want you to open. So let them know what's going to help you do that. Now, the more you can reveal your defenses and your needs, the better your loved ones can support you to keep opening. Now, of course, you might not at this point be fully aware of all your defenses and needs. So this is going to be kind of an evolving conversation, which brings us really to step number 5, which if you've already listened to episode number 2, you'll recognize as one of my 5 steps on any sort of growth path, and that's to stumble forward gracefully. And I'll link episode 2 also in the show notes. So it's always good to remember that fucking up, making a mess is all part of life. And by the way, that doesn't only go for you, but it goes for them too. So be willing to give them a break if they drop the ball. And remember that they're doing this on your request. So underneath, they probably really want to support you, and they'll probably be hard on themselves if they mess up, because they're learning too. In a sense, doing this in this way means that you're learning together. And of course, remember to include yourself in this. Give you a break, when you stumble, or fall. If the times when you don't speak up, or you don't share, or when you lose control, or when you make a mess. Like everything that you choose to master, it takes dedication and practice, and often a helping hand. So this is a radically self-loving and self-responsible approach, but it will allow others to see your humanity and your best intentions, perhaps lessening the impact on them, but also giving your humanity more space. So you might have listened to all that and gone, ooh, that sounds hard, that sounds like a lot. But there's good news. And the good news is, actually, you are naturally predisposed to be good at it. You've trained yourself with all the right skills. So you've learned to spot the warning signs. You've learned all you can about communicating diplomatically. You built up a natural grit, a stoic inner self. And your nature is full of love and naturally inclined towards forgiveness and understanding. So it's really just about applying these skills that you've already honed to a different end. So the warning signs go from signals to suppress to signals to communicate. And communicating put your teeth in, Joel. Communicating diplomatically goes from diffusing conflict out of fear of escalation and assertion to communicating your needs in a way it can be received by others. And that stoic inner self goes from self-protection to self-support. Now, forgiveness, love, and understanding of others at your expense becomes an engine of self-forgiveness, self-love, and self-understanding, which underpins a sustainable path of change and supports others to stay the course with you. So, I think the final thing I want to say before we wrap this up, we're getting towards time now, is to remind you that support can really help. So in a way, I'm advocating that you undertake your initial steps, to taking the lid off with a specific person that loves you, who you trust. In my experience, even, with a great and supportive partner, friend, or loved one as your main sounding board, getting additional support outside can also be a really, really good idea. So input from someone who knows the territory, others who are going through the same process can really help you stay focused and balanced. It can also be great to have sort of cheerleaders to keep you going and help you stay motivated, especially when the going gets tough. So yes, you're very capable, but it can also be, a real help to have accountability and support from folks. So, when you stumble, to remind you to forgive yourself and others. When you feel stuck, to remind you that you can do it. When you wonder, how the heck am I going to do this? To have another's perspective, that can help you break through. When you're scared, and you will get scared, there's that reassurance from those who understand. And given your survival strategy, you're not naturally inclined to ask for help. So setting up some form of support in advance is really going to serve you. Now, you can ask your friends for this support, or you can find a group, but I'd also consider getting coached through the process. This is a major life-enhancing transformation that you're about to undertake, and you're worth the investment. And as you probably tell, I'm really passionate about this topic. I know the territory. So, of course, if you'd like that coaching to be with me, then I'd love to help you through this journey. You can look at my sessions if you go to joelingmpa.com/sessions. You can check out all my stuff there. And if you want to book a free 15-minute chat just to check it's right for you and all that kind of thing, there's a button on that page where you can book in one of those sessions on a schedule. All right, I think we've made it. It's a wrap. God, I got heated today, didn't I? Told you I was passionate about it. So, well, let me have feedback. How's this episode touched you? Has it inspired you? What are your challenges with this whole keeping the lid on stuff? You can get in touch with me by email at joel@nonpersonalawareness.com. You can leave me a voice message directly via the website, www.beabrillianthuman.com. Or you can get in touch through social media. So that will be, I'd go to MPA Rocks on Facebook or Joel Young MPA on Instagram, on Twitter, and all those kind of things, and LinkedIn as well, I think. So, although to be honest, I'm not on LinkedIn much, I'm not on Twitter much. So really, Instagram and Facebook are my bag. So have a look there. But get in touch, let me know. And of course, yes, YouTube as well. Check out YouTube. Some people listen, watch the podcast on YouTube, in which case there's comments very conveniently sat there. You can leave a comment there as well. So I hope this really has touched you. I hope it's opened your mind to the possibility, and I mostly hope I've inspired you to the possibility and the awareness that you can change this. It's a very costly way to live, and you definitely deserve better. With that, I'm going to call it a wrap. So all that remains is to cue the moo.